Welcome to Cook the Garden Podcast, your weekly audio source for delicious and easy garden fresh recipes and growing tips. I'm your host, Ginain Grayes. Let's cook the garden. Hello, garden foodies. I'm so super excited to share this bonus episode with you today. I recently shared with our community about joining an initiative called Homegrown Hillsborough to help strengthen our local food system. To shed a little bit more light on this program and the importance of cultivating a strong food system, I invited Monica Petrella from Homegrown Hillsborough. Monica is a passionate advocate for regional food systems. As the Food System Program Coordinator for Hillsborough County, she helps stakeholders and organizations align their strategic plans to a larger community approach for food system development. Monica is also helping to spearhead Homegrown Hillsborough, a network of community members with the mission to grow a strong food system. In our conversation, Monica elaborates a little bit more on this initiative and so much more. Of course, she also shared a delicious and one of her favorite garden-to-plate recipes. So this conversation is certainly relevant no matter where you're listening from. However, if you are a Hillsborough County resident, we urge you to visit homegrownhillsborough.com to subscribe to their newsletter and to also participate in a very important food system survey, which is running now through the end of February. All of this information can be found in the show notes. So this was such a fun and such a pleasure having Monica on, and I really hope that you all enjoy this conversation and that you're inspired to get involved in your own local community. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's get started. Hey, Monica, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited about this conversation that we're going to have today. As you know, I'm a new homegrown member, and I'm super excited to kind of share with our community what that's all about. But before we jump into that, Monica, I know you grow, okay? I know you grow. I know you got some stuff going on. Tell our audience a little bit about what you have going on in your garden and if you have any garden aspirations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a new urban gardener. I live pretty close to downtown Tampa. And so I live in a condo, and for forever, I kind of had the excuse that I don't have a yard. And so I couldn't have my own garden. And I did try to entertain maybe starting a community garden in my neighborhood. But this year I was talking to my husband, who has an engineering background, and he said that we should start a balcony garden. And so we ended up doing that. He did a lot of research on the best way to set it up. And so there's something for any brand new gardener. I highly encourage, and I guess it is an endorsement, maybe a little bit of a plug, but the earth box system is the way to go. Earth boxes, they're like 20 years in the industry. They're perfect. They have these micro irrigation kits that are already set up. You'll talk to veteran gardens, new gardens, community gardens. They all talk about the earth boxes. And so anyways, we got some earth boxes on my pretty small balcony, and we have grown Swiss chard. We are growing Brussels sprouts. We have collards. We have these local Florida dividing onions. Those are from David Whitwam, who's also a member of Homegrown Hillsborough. We have cherry tomatoes. We have regular sized tomatoes. We grew a bunch of green beans, and we are transitioning to peppers. We have 2 beets that we've spent months and months watching these 2 beets grow. We're about a few carrots, probably like 3 carrots. And then we have a little herb garden. So honestly, for like my very small balcony, we have oftentimes more produce than I know what to deal with.
That's amazing. And for those of you interested in the earth boxes, it's so funny because a few of our guests on the show have mentioned the earth boxes. Oh. So I will definitely include the link and more information about those in the show notes. But I love, Monica, that you said that, because again, this just goes to what we were talking about earlier before we started, was that you don't need a whole bunch of space to grow, right? So you're doing 100%. All of this on your balcony. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's been really cool. And I love where I live. I love my condo, but it has made me a little itchy for a bigger yard because now that I'm really comfortable with my little balcony, I would love to grow more. But my condo has a community pool and we have a pretty big area where there's space that could be turned into a community garden. So I'm thinking of maybe next year expanding my garden to be more of a community garden for my other members in my condo building to also get involved, build that community, share some recipes, have some people kind of share, and like there's not a lot of work that goes into it, but
Right.
and so yeah, that's on the horizon. So super
Yeah.
excited.
Oh, I'm excited for you. That's
Hmm.
amazing. And that's what I feel like it's all about, right? Like
Hmm.
it becomes, I would say a healthy obsession, but just kind of like a community thing, right? You get the community involved, you share your harvest.
A hundred
They're wanting
percent.
to know how they can do that. They're wanting to know how you can do it together for the community. So thank you for sharing that. That's so amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been really fun, and I definitely encourage anybody that's on the fence about it just to buy one earth box and try that because you'll be inspired and you'll the next thing you know you'll be an urban farmer.
Yep, that's really good advice. Start small
Mhm.
and scalable. And yeah, so look, I love that you got your husband involved and that he's an engineer because I didn't have like an engineer mind.
Nope.
My husband and I did the best we can, did the best that we
Hmm.
could. But it's fun to just curate your own space, right? Like it's
Hmm.
super fun. So, all
It is.
right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And what I want to do is I want to get a little bit more. I know you're doing so much impactful work just here in our local community. Monica, we have a lot of folks listening that are local, but also from all over. So I think this conversation is going to be really inspiring just for anyone. You don't have to live in Hillsborough or locally to really be inspired and learn something from today's episode. But tell us a little bit. I know you're doing a lot with homegrown, with the extension, but before we jump into that, what's your background? How did you get started in this space? And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, okay, so she's already in that space. So she's got this
Mhm.
great garden, but you really don't have to be in the space. But tell me a little bit how you got started and where you
Yeah.
started and how you got here.
Awesome. Yeah. So I do want to say that really up until this year, I wasn't a gardener and I was actually the
Wow.
furthest thing from a gardener. So I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. So kind of right down the road. So I am a Floridian, but I'm not necessarily native to Tampa. And I don't come from a farming background. I don't come from a gardening background. And honestly, I don't even come from a cooking background. And so I was just your pretty standard suburban middle class Gainesville resident. And so how I ended up getting involved in food systems is I went to the University of Florida. The University of Florida is the state of Florida's land grant university. And we can kind of talk about what land grant universities mean when we talk about extension. But basically, land grant universities, there's one in every single state in the nation, and at least one. And they are rooted in agriculture. And so land grant universities often have a very strong agriculture program at their universities. And so at UF, I honestly kind of stumbled around my first few years trying to figure out what I wanted to do in this big old world and how I wanted to contribute, and ended up kind of stumbling into a class on agricultural economics and really liked the approach to food systems. But a lot of the stuff we were learning about was these international global food systems, exporting and trade and all of that. And so I was interested in food and interested in agriculture, but not necessarily interested in that giant level, that macro level. What I was interested in was in more of the community level and how does a food system at a community level impact the well-being of that community. And so I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Florida in food and resource economics, FRE. And it's basically an agribusiness degree. So it's a business degree and marketing focus for agriculture and large agribusinesses. And so that was cool and interesting and kind of got me on that path. One of the like aha moments that I had was at Hillsborough, actually not Hillsborough County Extension, but just UF IFAS Extension. This was up in Gainesville, had a small farms conference. And so as I was rounding out my either junior or senior year, I think it was my junior year, getting closer to graduating, getting closer to a job market, I decided to go to this small farms conference to see what do jobs look like once I get out of school and enter the market. And so at the Small Farms Conference, they had a bigger focus on more of these community level food systems. And that to me was a moment that changed my life. I was 20. I was on a pretty strict budget, but I found the $45 I needed for my little registration fee, and definitely a big turning point in my life. And so got really excited about that. And so going into my senior year, I was still working on my agribusiness degree, but I also ended up picking up a minor in organic and sustainable crop production. And so that minor is actually more horticulture. So it is more about growing plants organically, sustainably. And so that to me was kind of one of the first times when I realized what a niche career could look like, because I was with all of these plant nerds. They're all my friends, so I can call them that. But all these plant nerds that wanted to do small farming and regenerative farming and organic farming, and they wanted to use the food system as a tool for environmentalism and community well-being. But they had no idea how to uh, get organized, market, any of that enterprising stuff. And so all of my little plant nerd friends who were doing horticulture, I was in the College of Ag getting my agribusiness degree. And so that's where I kind of saw that intersection, that basically kind of led me to believe that if we have hardworking people that want to do the really hard work of growing food, like farming is hard, then they might need some help with getting that message to the community. They might need some help in that partnership development. They might need some help with some of those kind of intangible pieces that connect us all together. And so with that fuel, I ended up going to the University of Vermont to get my master's degree in community development with a focus on community food systems. And so basically, like I stumbled into agribusiness and then I stumbled into organic and sustainable crop production. I met my friends. I got really inspired. I kind of started seeing what a niche career could look like. And then I went and got my master's degree in basically exactly that: partnership building within food systems. It talks a lot about social capital, which is relationships, and basically trying to better learn how to support the people doing the hard work. That's kind of what I like to say is, if you're a community gardening coordinator or a food bank leader or a nutritionist or a farmer, you're doing the hard work. And it's a pleasure for me to be able to come in and support the work you're doing, hopefully alleviate maybe some of the administrative aspects of it, and then hopefully connect you to other people that can complement and expand your work. So yeah, so that's kind of where I got to where I was. And the last 10 years, I've basically just kind of stayed eye on the prize and continued to refine my expertise, learn from other communities. Living in Vermont was such an experience in its own, just because Vermont is a very prideful local food state. And so everywhere you go, they have local food. And they have really thriving networks that make sure that food security is always a priority, environmentalism, culture and food and all the fun things that can come out of that. So yeah. And so I moved back to Florida in 2016 and moved to Tampa because I wanted to be somewhere different than Gainesville, where I lived my whole life. And then very quickly realized that there was a lot of really good activities already going on. And there was a lot of those hard workers that I just mentioned already kind of doing the hard work, but they were siloed. And that's pretty common. And you said that you have listeners from all across the state and the nation. And I'm sure in their communities, they probably have these hard workers that are doing these individual actions. But in order for this work to be really impactful and powerful, we have to coordinate. And so, so most states, communities, counties, whoever, whatever level, a lot of these places that have successful food systems, they have a connector. They have an organization that can make sure that everybody knows kind of where to go, just to find information, find partners, ask for help, ask for resources. And so that's kind of what Homegrown Hillsborough has ended up becoming. And it's been an honor and a pleasure. And it's been really exciting to not only be able to kind of carve my own path, but to know that I'm doing impactful work that helps the people doing the hard work be more successful.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that, you eventually found your sweet spot, right? And going and experiencing Vermont and how they, manage their food systems, their local food systems. Would you say that Homegrown kind of models it after these strong systems and, just really trying to implement what they're seeing that's successful in other areas here in Hillsborough?
Yeah, 100%. And so one of the best kind of value propositions of a community food system is that when you redirect dollars from a national or international supply chain to a local or regional supply chain, the impact of those dollars is much greater. And so one of the professors that I studied under, he did an economic analysis, basically getting a baseline assessment of how many Vermonters are spending dollars in the local food system. And that already generated billions of dollars of economic development, hundreds of thousands of jobs, those kind of things. But then he also studied what would happen if households in Vermont just spent 1% more of their food dollars on local food than on more of these kind of commodity supply chains. And the impact there was also billions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Wow.
So what that kind of showed me is these little changes can really ripple throughout our community and make these incredible impacts. But it does need to be coordinated. It can't just little old me. If I were to decide to spend 100% of my dollars locally, that would make some small impacts, but it wouldn't by any means create billions of dollars of economic development and hundreds of thousands
Right.
of jobs. But if all 1.5 million residents of Hillsborough County decided to shift 1% of their food dollar, 5% of their food dollar, maybe even $10 a month, something like that, then we would see that massive impact. And so being able to kind of see what that looked like, and then a lot of times these programs, these initiatives, the more people you have in it, obviously the more impactful you can be. And so Vermont is a state of 600,000 people. Burlington, where I lived, was a city of 40,000 people. Tampa is 400,000 people. Hillsborough
Yeah,
County is 1.5. Florida is 20 million. So
exactly.
so you can kind of get inspired and say, well, shoot, if they can do it there where they only have a 4-month growing season and not a lot of people, then surely we
Absolutely.
can do it here where we have an incredible growing season and way more people. So that was definitely really inspiring to me and made me excited to come back home and hopefully try to implement some of the good work they're doing in Vermont, in California, in New York, in Colorado, in Minneapolis, in all kinds of different places.
Yeah, for sure. As we kind of talk a little bit more about homegrown, because I want you to kind of set it up and let the listeners know like what
Hmm.
exactly is homegrown Hillsborough. A lot of
Hmm.
Hillsborough residents may not be familiar with it yet.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's such power in the concept of Hillsborough, like there's power in numbers. And I
Absolutely.
just love that it's just a collective of um, people, organizations, businesses that are just coming together to help really elevate and strengthen our food system here. So can you kind of give us a little bit of insight into what exactly is homegrown? What's it all about? And all
Yeah.
that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, unfortunately, one of the hardest parts of my job is that there's a lot of vocabulary. And so hopefully your listeners won't get overwhelmed. Hopefully they'll listen to it multiple times or they'll stay engaged and this vocabulary will become very comfortable to them. But today is their first vocabulary lesson. So the food system is generally regarded as all of the different components that are required to feed a community. And there's a visual that we use a lot. And if you see any Homegrown Hillsborough branding, you'll probably see it. But there is something called the sector wheel. And so within the food system, there are 6 sectors. And those sectors are production, which is the growing of food or animal products or honey or, anything that we're eating. There is processing, which is turning those raw ingredients into something that is more readily edible, or some kind of value add. So production, maybe you are a rancher and you raise cattle. Okay, well, the processing is turning that cattle. You're not going to the grocery store and buying a whole cow. You're going to the
Right.
grocery store and buying ground beef. So the processing is what turns that cow into ground beef. So we have production, the first one, processing, the second one, distribution, which is how does those processed products get to a retail outlet, the supply chain involved in that. Then we have marketing, which is how do we as consumers go and get this stuff? So is it through a grocery store? Is it through a farmer's market? Is it through a U-Pick event or a farm stand or a CSA, which is something that people may or may not know about? The next sector is consumption, which is the fun part. It's eating the food. And that's where nutrition comes in. And so the importance of feeding your body, taking care of yourself, use plate as a tool for longevity and success. And then the last aspect, which is kind of one of the things that really separates this community food system aspect from more of the commodity food system, is waste recovery. So by and large, for the most part, anytime that somebody has organic scraps, they are throwing those away. They are not composting them and turning those organic materials into soil amendments that can then be used to help produce more food. And so, and I can send you this in case you want to publish it or I put it on a
That would be
blog,
great.
but basically these sectors all fulfill one another and they all contribute to the next. And so in theory, it can be this self-fulfilling process where at this regional level, we have all that we need. The food that we are growing, all of the waste from that can be used to grow more food. We are all very literate in nutrition. We're all very comfortable cooking in the kitchen. We all understand food safety and kind of the perils of what food insecurity can do to a community. And so that is what the food system is. And so within each of those sectors, there's like 100,000 different ways that all those things can be done. So production, that can be a large conventional farm that is growing 2,000 acres of strawberries and only strawberries, or that can be a 5-acre regenerative, biodiverse, biodynamic, organic farm that sells directly to consumers and has diversified products. Maybe they have broccoli and eggplant and tomato and basil and all kinds of things. It can also be community gardens. It can also be my balcony garden and your backyard garden.
Right.
Those are all part of production. And so within processing, distribution, marketing, consumption, waste recovery, within each of those sectors, there's 100,000 different things that could mean and that we could do. And so it can very easily get overwhelming. And a lot of times these actions are like all the different activities that are happening within these sectors. A lot of times there's motivation for community well-being. People are composting because they believe that if they compost, then they might be able to contribute to natural resource management. Food banks are redistributing food because they believe that we're better when we have our neighbors able to access adequate nutrition. And so those individual activities can become very overwhelming because a lot of these problems are big problems and they are often sad problems. We hate that 1 in 5 Hillsborough County residents is experiencing food insecurity. I personally am not, but I hate the fact that that's happening to somebody else who is in my backyard, who lives amongst me. And so whenever you're doing kind of more of these community or projects, resources can be hard, time can be hard, finding volunteers and space and motivation sometimes, can be hard. And so ultimately, communities that have successful food systems or community food systems, they generally have a coordinating body that tries to come in between these individual actors and activities to bring everybody together to help us realize where we can share resources, where we can provide assistance, where maybe, you're a farmer, I'm a cook. Can we create some kind of reciprocity between the two of us to help support each other? And so that's what Homegrown Hillsborough is. Homegrown Hillsborough is simply a network of community partners who want to do food system work. And so that's very broad. And we are in the process of specifying what exactly that means. And so, for example, depending on the organizations that get involved, and this is open to any community organization in Hillsborough County that wants to do this work. It doesn't matter if you're a law office or a farmer. We have room for you in our network. We have work that you can help us get done. But based on what all these community organizations, when we all get together and we decide what our vision looks like, we're going to agree upon what a future vision looks like and what our goals and our values look like. And depending on that, we're going to some priorities. And so that could be something like building a very robust farm to school program where all 208 or something schools in Hillsborough County. Maybe they all have a garden on site, a teacher that is well equipped and supported and educated, that has curriculum that they can tie back to their standards. Maybe the PTA can help get involved fundraising. Maybe we can coordinate with the cafeteria to get some local products in there. And then hopefully the goal would be over time to really transform what food system education looks like. So that way we have, young children that go through farm to school programs grow up to be healthy adults who feel confident growing their own food, feel confident, processing, turning eggplant into eggplant Parmesan. They know how to use a mandolin. They know how to safely prepare food and deal with the ingredients and bake things and make it tasty and make it healthful. So Homegrown Hillsborough, I am simply here. I'm the coordinator. And so Homegrown Hillsborough is not me. I serve the network. I serve the organizations that, like I said, are doing what I call the hard work of being boots on the ground, dealing with, or serving these clients, serving teachers, serving children, serving all these different communities. My job as the coordinator is to do the administrative work of getting everybody together in the room to say, what are our goals and values and how are we going to get that done and who can do what? And so I work at the direction of the network partners. And like I said, anybody can be a network partner as long as you're in Hillsborough County and you want to do food system work. And together we're going to discover kind of what that journey looks like. And so it can be really complex to understand because a lot of it is invisible at this point in time in January 2024. But soon I think you'll start seeing kind of the material output of what these projects look like. Hopefully soon you will see, July is watermelon month. Go on down to your local community garden or urban farm, or you pick, go talk to the farmer, go learn a watermelon recipe, and then go compost it at your local community garden or your backyard composter. Or there's some paid services, so connecting all those pieces. So basically we can accomplish whatever our food system goals might be.
That's so amazing. And I can tell you, just even listening to you from a resident standpoint, resident perspective, it really excites me. It excites me to know that there are some resources now being put together for this very cause. Can you talk about, you mentioned, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 in 5 residents in Hillsborough County is experiencing food insecurity.
Yeah.
That is just it's sad and it's astounding. Can you maybe shed a little bit of light? What are some of the challenges that we're seeing in Hillsborough County? I do think that there are a lot of parallels in beyond Florida, all places that our listeners are listening from. But can you kind of give us an insight into what you're seeing? I mean, that 1 in 5 is pretty, that's a big number. But what are some other challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah. And so food insecurity is, so just for those that don't know what that term might mean, once again, more vocabulary. Somebody is food secure when they are able to reliably access enough nutrients on a regular basis. So basically, the way that we talk about it kind of more commonly is, do you know where your next meal is coming from? And so somebody like me, let's say I do have an empty fridge, but I know that my next meal is going to be coming from the restaurant I go to, okay, fine. If it's not in my own house, then I know that I can go and get food to get me over until I do go to the grocery store. But so food insecurity, to kind of like flip that, is you're not sure where your next meal comes from. And there's a lot of dynamics to it. That's a very, very, very broad way of saying it. But basically, food access is kind of the combination of 4 different dynamics, which is available. So it has to physically be available. And that's a huge issue in food insecurity and food insecure neighborhoods, which is they might not have a full range grocery store. So they might only have a convenience store, which does not specialize in grocery products. A convenience store specializes in convenience products, which can often be highly processed, highly caloric, not a lot of variety, not a lot of basic nutrients, micros and macros and all of that. And so availability is the first. So do you have a full range grocery store where you can access all of the nutrients you need to be healthy? Affordable is the next aspect. And I think that we have seen that a lot in the last few years with the pandemic and inflation, and especially in Tampa Bay, the cost of living is soaring every single day and wages have not changed. And so when you have that combination, you're seeing what used to be sturdy middle-class families slip into food insecurity. And, really no fault of their own. There is something called ALICE, which, I probably shouldn't have introduced it without being able to define it. But basically, ALICE stands for households that are gainfully employed. So it is working households. So it's not people that are not employed, that are it's employed households that are still experiencing food insecurity, just because the wages are not able to stick up with meet up with all the other rising costs. So availability, it has to be available for you to get to it, whether you have a car or walking distance, all of that. Affordable, you have to be able to make it work for your budget. Reliable, so it needs to, it shouldn't just be, the third Sunday of every month, the farmer's market's going to be there. But what if it's the first Wednesday?
Right.
So it needs to be something that you can reliably count on. And then the last aspect of access is appropriate, and that refers to like culturally appropriate. And so there is a story that I like to say that I like to share. So here in Tampa Bay, we have Feeding Tampa Bay, which is like our premier food bank, and they work with hundreds of organizations to help distribute food to those in need. So through food banks and churches and pantries. So Feeding Tampa Bay, the CEO and director is this lovely gentleman named Thomas Mance. And a few years ago, I was lucky to go to an event with him around Thanksgiving. And some stakeholders were there, and they were saying, "Oh, do you want us to tell people to donate turkeys?" You know, a lot of times the food pantry sees a spike and increase of donated turkeys because families are saying, "Oh, well, we eat turkey for Thanksgiving, so surely other people will want a
Right.
turkey." Well, his story is, unfortunately, the people that they serve don't always eat turkey.
Right.
And so it ends up being not culturally appropriate because they don't know how to cook it. They don't know how to prepare it. Their kids aren't comfortable with it, so they won't eat it. And so a good idea basically kind of goes to waste because it was not appropriate for that family. And so he likes to say, if you want to make a donation, reach out to us and we can talk about what that looks like, whether that is through just through a financial donation, or we can help point you in the right direction of some of the other culturally appropriate foods, or so basically you always want to be talking to the people that are actually doing the boots on the ground work because they have the best insight. But yeah, that's just a story to talk about, what culturally appropriate foods look like.
Yeah.
Culturally appropriate to me might be something different than a family in East Tampa or West Tampa
Right.
or South Tampa or New Tampa. So those four different components, so available, affordable, reliable, and appropriate, those four things all make up food security. And so, yeah, based on all of those, we one in five, I believe, I think it's 20% of Hillsborough County residents are experiencing food insecurity at given.
Yeah.
And that has huge impacts on our
Sure.
community's ability to be our best selves. So if you have a hungry student, they can't focus on learning if they're if they're just,
If
distracted
they're
by being
hungry.
hungry. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
It impacts your and your ability to sleep well. It makes you more irritable. And so basically, how can we ask people to be their best selves if they can't feel good, health wise? So food insecurity is a big thing. I am very happy to say that many people in Hillsborough County want to fix it. They want to eradicate it. They want to make sure that everybody is provided for, and that we have systems and community interventions set up so that we can all be our best selves. And so that people that maybe need a little bit of assistance to get to stable ground, that we can provide that for them, and then they can become self-sufficient and fulfilled and innovative and excited and all the good things that we want our neighbors to be. So I know that if we all work together, that we can eradicate food insecurity in Hill. But we do have a lot working against us because it is really hard work, and it's systematic work. It's nothing that I can just wave a wand and fix. It's
Right.
nothing, it takes, and then there's a lot of offshoots from that as well, which is, if you've always been exposed to highly processed food at your convenience store, well, if I come around and give you a basket of produce, you might not necessarily know how to turn that into a healthy meal. And so
That's
programs
right.
like yours can really help with things like that, because we can start doing outreach and having, uh, bachelor's cooking classes
That's
for
right.
young men who are learning how to cook for themselves,
I love
or
it.
youth empowerment, where kids can learn how to make a yummy dish for Mother's Day, and then turn that slowly culturally into something that is just part of our cultural fabric. So
Oh,
so everyone can play a role, and we can do it together.
absolutely. I love what you're saying. That's honestly part of what you just said right there. I just feel like there's such a disconnect And that's why I do what I do, is that access is one thing, but then how do we educate folks? And so when, just like what you said, when you're used to maybe shelf stable, like
Hmm.
canned goods or
Hmm.
whatever, and that's all you eat, or
Hmm.
all you're eating is processed, what we can't expect folks to know what to do with a basket full of zucchini or
Hmm.
broccoli or whatever. So I think there's been that educational gap, and so that's something that I'm trying to fix and do my
Yeah.
little part. And
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And my
yeah,
personal story is I love my mother. I adore my mother. She is so wonderful. She was a hamburger helper mom. And so
okay.
she was a full-time CFO of a growing company. She had me and my brother. She was, trying to do everything, be everyone to everything. And so oftentimes she would say, "All right, Monica, it's your turn for dinner. So go and make hamburger helper." And so obviously I can, read a recipe and follow that recipe. And Hamburger Helper, I love it. No, don't come after me, Hamburger Helper
Yeah.
fans. I love it. I'm still pro. It's still good. But it made it so that when I went to college, I remember thinking, I'm going to get into cooking. I want to learn how to be a really good chef and a really good cook. And so I printed out my little recipe and I go to Publix and I am confused on the different types, the different cuts of meat and how to look for the right type of produce. What how to feel if it's squishy or firm. What's the difference between a chive and a green onion? So I'm like lost and confused, and then I have to go to the spices, and I need 14 different types of spices, but they come in these giant containers and they're all $6 each. But even though I just need a quarter of a teaspoon, and so basically I had this experience where I was like, I'm gonna go and transform my life. And then $65 later, for a meal that was not that good because once again, I still am not a very good cook. And so that was really discouraging. And
Yeah.
it made it so that, and, I happened to have $65 to play with basically. Even though at the time I was in college and it was a decision that I made. I said, I want to learn how to do this. So I'm going to spend my money this way, but it was not something that I could afford long term. And so basically I want to make it so that people don't have to have that experience. Or if they
Right.
do, they'll know where to go to get the cooking lessons,
That's
to
right.
to see. Yeah. So yeah, so I don't have a head start. I'm basically learning a lot of this right alongside
I
all
love
of
it.
the network partners and all of the residents, which makes it, I hope it makes it that it is impactful and effective because I'm also learning and
I
I
love
can
that.
reflect on how that should be done. Yeah, so it's at the end of the day, we're not going to place any fault on an individual. We're just
That's
going to
right.
create a community culture where we can go and solve these problems together.
Absolutely. I love it. And we all play a part, right? And I think this is why this initiative is so powerful, because it's just like what you said. I mean, your mom did the best she could. My parents,
Hmm.
did the best they could, with what we had. So I think, the more, what's that saying? I'm going to mess it up. I always mess up sayings, but basically you do better when you learn more, you do better, or something like that. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know what I'm trying
yeah,
to say. And
I
so I
do.
think we're all learning. We're all, I certainly don't know everything about growing food,
Hmm.
but it's a daily journey for me, and that's what I really try to focus on, is sharing what I learn. I share it with the world,
Yep.
and so we all play a role in it, and this is why this is such impactful work. So Monica, you talked about, I made a little note here. You just said that you're not a really good cook. And
Hmm.
I doubt that, because you just shared this recipe with me, girl. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's a cook somewhere in there. So as
Somewhere.
you as you know, our listeners enjoy our recipes that we share here on Cook the Garden. And you have a really delicious, yet very, very easy, anyone can do it, but a delicious diced cherry tomato bruschetta recipe. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like I said, in my balcony garden, we have been growing cherry tomatoes. And I will quickly say, if anybody is scared about starting to garden, an earth box and grow cherry tomatoes. For some reason, cherry tomatoes are just the easiest thing, and they produce so much fruit. And
They
actually, I know
do.
that tomatoes, it's the whole debate whether it's a fruit or a vegetable. I'm going to call it a fruit. They produce so much, and they produce it not all at one time. And so it's a really cool plant because we've basically been harvesting our cherry tomato plant for like months now. And I
That's
made the
awesome.
mistake of not weighing all of my harvest, but I sent you a picture and I think maybe you'll share it with others. But I have this giant bowl full of tomatoes and I get that like once every 10 days, just so many
That's
cherry tomatoes.
amazing. Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
love
And
it.
so my name is Italian. I don't have a lot of Italian like roots or heritage, but my name, Monica Petrella, anybody that is Italian will automatically assume that I am Italian. And so I've been trying to kind of lean a little more into that.
Yeah.
And maybe try to embrace some ancient heritage from beyond.
Yes,
And
I
so
love
and
it.
yeah, and I love Italian food. So I'm up to my ears in these cherry tomatoes, and I don't know what to do with them. And I love Italian food, and so I basically said I want to make some bruschetta. And then also one of the other changes we made in my house recently is we got a bread machine. And so my
Ooh.
husband and I, yeah, are making fresh loaves of bread. And so I said, well, we have these cherry tomatoes, we have this fresh bread. Let's go ahead and make some bruschetta. So I hopped on the internet and I looked at a handful of recipes. And the one that I shared with you is kind of the one that I ended up going with. But basically, you need to get a few cups of either cherry tomatoes or you can do regular tomatoes. Dice them up into kind of, small to medium sized diced because they ultimately are going to go onto a little tostini piece of bread and then you're going to bite them. So you don't want huge hunks because sometimes those big bites can be a little too hard, but you don't want itty bitty puree either. So you dice up your tomatoes. And then you add some olive oil and you kind of let them soak with some olive oil and some balsamic, some shaved Parmesan, some fresh basil, which I also have in my garden. So you just harvest, maybe like 6 big leaves of it, and kind of cut those into little strings, little dice, doesn't matter. Put all that into a bowl, some salt and pepper to taste. Put it in your fridge for like 30 minutes, kind of let those juices get all sucked up into
Mm,
those cherry
yummy.
tomatoes. Get your bread, toast it, put a little bit of butter or maybe a little bit of oh, and garlic. Sorry, garlic's a huge part too. You want to chop up some garlics and put that into your bruschetta mix. Let all that sit for a little bit. Get your bread ready. Put your bruschetta right on top of your toasted little crostini, and mwah, it's so good, so
Mm,
delicious. It's fresh from your garden. It can stay a really long time because basically those juices keep getting sucked up. And so yeah, it can be an appetizer. It can be you can make a big piece of toast and have it as a meal. And yeah, vegetarian. And it's good. So that's one of my
yeah.
favorite things to do when I am drowning in cherry tomatoes.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And now I'm hungry and I think I'm gonna make me some bruschetta because I actually do have so I've got some yellow pear tomatoes, and I do have some grape tomatoes, so I can maybe do like a little mixture. And
There we
I
go.
just harvested a bunch of my basil because as you know, we just had like a little cold snap.
Yes.
And in Florida, we have cold snaps, believe it or not.
Yes.
Okay. And so I just harvested a bunch of my basil. So I need to do something with it. So I think I may do this. So yeah, I will
I hope you
definitely be
do.
sharing this recipe in the show notes. And I'll also be sharing it on my social media. So yeah, I can't wait now. I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to be able
Awesome.
to stop thinking about this. And your bread maker, tell me a little bit about that because I've been wanting to make my own breads.
Yeah, and so in the pandemic, much like everybody else, I tried to learn how to make my own bread, and I did. It just takes, 6 hours and a
Yeah.
decent amount of trial and error. And so my husband and I, we don't really eat a lot of bread, and so we have this very unfortunate habit of getting a loaf of bread, having a slice or two, forgetting that we have it basically, and
Yeah.
then it'll get moldy and then we have to compost it and we feel bad about that.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes we'll want sandwiches or, bruschetta or anything else that bread is good with. And so we got this bread machine that it is so easy. It literally takes like several minutes to put all of your ingredients in, and then you press a button and then you walk away, and then 2 hours later you come back and you have a fresh loaf of whatever type of bread you want. So just regular white, honey, we did raisin bread.
Oh,
You can
goodness.
do all kinds of things. You can do
Wow.
herbs. We've done herbs from our garden. Yeah. And so basically it's been our way to kind of decrease our waste and be more intentional about our bread
Right.
consumption.
I
And
love it.
it's, like I said, super easy. And so if I'm working from home or on the weekend, or if he's available to be at home, then you just press a button and then it beeps a few hours later, and then you are on your bread maker. So it's
Ah.
a little bit of cheating, but hey, that's what the robots are for. So
Look, I have nothing against the cheating.
yeah.
And hey, if you're a busy person, like we're a busy family. My husband and
Yep.
I both work. I've got the blog, I've got the podcast. So sometimes, yeah, cheating, hey, there's
Yep.
nothing wrong with it. No judgments as long as it's good and you enjoy
Exactly.
it and stuff's not going to waste. I love that.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm just thinking like all the stuff I can do with that. You can spread some like compound butters on
Oh
there, some
yeah. Oh yeah.
jams. Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
We can go to town with that. Okay, cool, cool. So, look, I'm having so much fun with this conversation. This has been such an amazing conversation, and I really, really hope that our listeners are getting, inspired and something out of this. But I just one more question I wanted to ask, because I think this is important, is how can how can people, just regular everyday people,
Hmm.
get involved in supporting their local food system? Now that you've given us a little bit of education on what exactly a food system is, what
Hmm.
can everyday people do to make an impact? Whether it's getting involved in their local extension, or if they have their version of a homegrown, or even just for Hillsborough people, how can we get more involved?
Yeah, and so we haven't really talked too much about extension, but so earlier I mentioned that the University of Florida is a land grant university. Every single state has at least one. So no matter where you are in the U.S., there is an extension in your state. And basically, what extension is, it's this like 150-year-old piece that says part of these universities' mandate, part of the required work that they do by being a state entity, is to always stay on top of best practices, generate new research, and basically maintain that cutting edge research that then needs to be turned around and extension into the community. And so unfortunately, sometimes with universities, you have this ivory tower, which basically all this great research is going on in one place, but it's not leaving the university and it's not going to people that actually could benefit from it. So extension was designed over 100 years ago to fight that. So in Florida, every single county has at least one extension office, and at your extension office, you have a group of very incredibly intelligent technical experts on a variety of resource management. And so back in the day when extension was first created, everybody was a farmer. So the bulk of the research and the extension education was all about farming. Now that it's 2024 and less than 1% population is actually engaged in farming, we still do the traditional agriculture stuff. So a handful of my colleagues are specialized in certain crops and pests and water management and permitting and all kinds of things that are needed for successful agriculture. But also have colleagues that specialize in what it's like to be a new parent and how to find the right resources for your family. We have an agent that helps with household budgeting. So that's less natural resources, more household resources, but still resource management. We have extension agents that can help you look at your irrigation in your office, or not in your office, in your yard, to see if you're running the most efficient system, because not only will that save you money as a homeowner and someone who pays the irrigation bill, but it'll also our county money on reducing our consumption of water. And so basically, Extension is an office of public service educators that are trained in a variety of specialty topics. And so every county is different. So Pinellas County, right next door to us, is the most, it's the highly dense, most developed county in the state. And so therefore, they don't have farms. They do not have agriculture because every inch of it is developed for density, versus Hillsborough County. Half of our county is still very much engaged in agriculture
Right.
production. So the extension offices have different experts because they range from community to community. So all of that is to say is if you're in Jacksonville, you're going to want to go to your Duval Extension office. If you are in Tallahassee, you're going to want to go to your Leon County Extension office. If you're here in Tampa, you're going to want to come over to Hillsborough County Extension. And we are always offering classes on all types of things. So we're going to have a spring vegetable gardening class, I think, in mid-February. We have something called the Triple Workshops, which is composting, rainwater harvesting, and micro irrigation. We do those once a month. And we have classes on pest management. We have classes on ornamental plants. We have all kinds of classes all the time. These classes are provided at a very, very low cost. And the reason why they're a low cost is basically because we've learned that if you do things for free, sometimes you'll have people SVP that don't show up.
Right.
And so as a way to mitigate that, we do generally have a $5 registration fee, but that being said, the registration fee should never prevent you from attending a class. And so if you are interested in a class, but you don't have the $5, just reach out to me and we'll make sure we get you set up. But all of that information's on our website, on the Hillsborough County Extension website. Unfortunately, our website is not very easy to say. So I'm just going to tell you to Google Hillsborough County Extension or wherever you are, whatever county extension, and that should come up. For Homegrown Hillsborough, if you want to get involved and stay in the know about different events and opportunities and volunteers opportunities and businesses to support and all kinds of fun things that we're going to be starting to kind of release throughout the next year or so, then you can go to homegrownhillsborough.com, and there is basically three big buttons. One button says sign up for the newsletter, and you can sign up for that newsletter. I've made it so that you can sign up on your specific preferences. So if you just want to learn how to grow food in your own yard and you don't really care about working within the network to do collaborative projects, that's totally fine. You can just sign up for learning how to grow food in your own yard. That's totally fine. So you'll see kind of other opportunities like that. Sign up to your preferences. So homegrownhillsborough.com. One of the buttons is the newsletter. The other button is to take the food system survey, which if you are a Hillsborough County resident, I am begging you to take this survey. We are basically trying to understand the types of programs and projects that Hillsborough County residents want to see, so that way we could go and implement them. And so kind of the structure of Homegrown Hillsborough is that I am going to help administer and serve the network of organizations, and together we're going to create these engaging projects, programs, campaigns, initiatives, things like that that will then serve Hillsborough County residents. So if you want to see something like like I said, I mentioned earlier, July is watermelon month. Well, maybe together with these organizations, we can make it so that different businesses throughout your neighborhood are highlighting watermelons in some way. And maybe in your local park, we can set up a fun little family-friendly event that highlights watermelons. So if you want to get on the email list to learn that stuff, sign up for the newsletter. And then if you want to see more stuff like that, we need to know, and we need you to take the survey. And so the survey is going to run through the end of February. So it is coming to an end. We have had a really good response, but we always need more. So we have 1.5 million residents in Hillsborough County. We want to hear from 1.5 million people. And so please take just a quick few seconds to let us know what type of food system programs you'd like to see. So that way I can turn around and help these organizations provide those things. Because we only want to build it if people are going to come. And
That's right.
I know people are hungry for it. I know people are
Yep.
excited about this type of stuff. So homegrownhillsborough.com will get you in the right direction. And then Hillsborough County Extension is if you want to learn about other extension classes, workshops, opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for running us through that. I'll also include all of the links and that information in the show notes for anyone who wants to come back and listen to the episode and get all the information that you mentioned, Monica. This was
Thank you.
absolutely amazing. And I have to say, just kind of amening what you said about the extension, I have been able to really leverage the extension. I've taken composting classes. I've taken micro irrigation. My goodness. Rainwater harvesting. Like I've even had the extension test my soil. So
Yep.
it's just, don't sleep on your local extension. They are
100%.
so valuable and they are there to help. So please do. And so guys, go to the show notes, look at all the links, take that survey. Part of this is a two-way thing, like we want to make good change, but we need the feedback, right? So Monica needs your feedback. She needs to know what types of programs you want to see. What are some of the pain points? What's on your mind? Because
100%.
they're really taking this information and they're putting it to work. So definitely, I encourage you to take that survey. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I really appreciate you just, coming on and talking to me about this, Monica. I'm so excited for all the work that you're doing, that you will do in the future. And I'm really excited to partner as well.
Well, thank you so much. And it's just been a great pleasure to be able to come on your podcast. And honestly, meeting people like you is one of the reasons why I do this work. I know that we have people like yourself that want to do impactful, coordinated work and really transform our communities for the better. And so yeah, I couldn't have dreamed of a better partner. And I'm just so excited for you to be part of our network. And it really is, this is truly my dream job. It's an honor to be able to every single day, and I look forward to it every single day. And so, yeah, I'm here to serve, and I'm happy to do that however that looks. And thanks for allowing me to talk about that experience and talk about the network. And hopefully, we'll be able to kind of see how this all ends up in the next few years. We can start seeing these transformational projects and do all the things we want to do.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again so much, Monica, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Cook the Garden. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. As a new podcast, it really helps to add value while growing our awesome community. As always, I really appreciate it. Until next time, friends, keep slaying those garden fresh recipes.